Okay.
Welcome, everyone. We're in the second Shiur on Mesechta Megillah. If you missed last week, because there was a glitch in the recording, so if you missed last week, very quickly, the Mishnah said at the beginning of the Mesechta that the Megillah is read on 5 different days, starting with the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th of Adar. We know that the Pasukim in the Megillah tell us that the Megillah is read on the 14th for regular cities and the 15th for walled cities. The reason given, of course, in the Megillah is because the Jews of all over fought the battle against those who would come against them with the permission of Achashverosh, both of them actually. And Achashverosh gave permission to the Jews to fight back. Well, isn't that wonderful? We have a right to fight back. So, but I can't stop them from attacking because I already wrote it. That's all. Mesechta in general shows what it's typish. But the Jews can fight back. And once the Jews could fight back, everybody gets scared. Oh, Jews fight back. They all ran away. So they fought on the 13th. And that was Tainus Esther. Right? And they rested on the 14th. Because they rested on the 14th, they made parties on the 14th. Right? Victory in the war, Sudas Hadar. So they made parties. So that became Purim. But in Shushan, they fought also on the 14th. Because the Goyim in Shushan were very interested in doing exactly what Achashverosh said. So he said, fight. See, they wanted to kill the Jews. Surprise, they fought back. And so when they fought back, they won and they rested on the 15th. They rested on the 15th. The 15th became Purim. Okay. Then the Mishnah tells us that when it comes to the 11th, 12th, and 13th, the reason that we make those days also possible Purim for people out in the villages where they don't have a minyan and they only come into town for Monday and Thursday, which are the judgment days when the Beis Din is sitting, and there's Kriyas HaTorah. So then they read the Megillah on the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, and the 11th, 12th, 13th. The 14th and 15th remain Purim days itself. Okay. And we explained that when they came in on Mondays and Thursdays, it's possible to get the 11th, 12th, or 13th. 11th, because if Purim came on the Marshall, let's say Purim was on Tuesday, right? If Purim was on Wednesday, so that's the 14th, right? So they came in 2 days earlier. That was the 12th. Right? That was Monday. Right. So they read on Monday. Right. How do you get 11? If Purim was on Sunday, right? Purim was on Sunday. They couldn't read on Sunday because they didn't come in except Mondays and Thursdays. So you go back to Shabbos. Shabbos is 13. Friday is 12. Thursday is 11. Okay, good. Good. No, if you can't read the Megillah on Shabbos. We're going to learn later on that if Purim comes on Shabbos, you can't read the Megillah anyway because you're not allowed to carry. And we're worried that someone's going to carry the Megillah on Shabbos. Okay. So now they had to read it. The 11th we already discussed. The 12th we already discussed. And the 13th is obvious. If the 14th is on Tuesday, right? So then the Monday before is the 13th. So now you have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We mentioned the famous Cheshek Shlomo, who said, if you take a look in the Megillah, there are a total of 5 times in all the Megillah that you see the word Purim. Okay? 2 times it's spelled Pei Vav Reish Yud Mem. 3 times it's spelled Pei Reish Yud Mem. Okay. It's Chaser to teach us that there are 2 main days. What are the 2 main days? 14 and 15. And 3 non-main days, which is only for the people who live in the villages that are far away, that they came in to bring food and water to the people in the cities. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, that was the first Mishnah. And we're ready, almost ready to get to the Gemorah. But we said at the end of the Shiur, we have a question. What's the question? The question of the Ran. And if you'll all please turn in this Megillah, in this edition of the Gemorah, the Ran, I'll tell you in a second. It's after the Mashah. 1 second. Okay, it's at the end over here, after the Chidushim. The Ran can be found on the first page of the Ran, all the way in the back. All right, it's all the way in the back. It's after it's after the page. Chaf Ches. Go all the way to the back. It looks like this. It looks like the Gemorah. It looks like the Gemorah, right? This is what it looks like. Okay, here it goes. Take a look at the Gemorah. It looks like Gemorah, but on the top it says Mesechta Megillah Im Perish Rashi Im Perish Arav Rabbeinu Nisan. It's all the way in the back of the Gemorah. Okay. Keep turning till you see what looks like the Gemorah. Okay. Yeah, and it says Daf Aleph. Yeah, it says Daf Aleph, even though it's because it's not the Gemorah.
Yeah, right.
It's not the Gemorah. It's the Perish of the Ran. Okay, do you see it? It looks like this. Again, if I say this is what it looks like, right? It's at the end of the Gemorah. You keep turning until you see what looks like Gemorah. You see what looks like Gemorah, then you go to the first Daf of that Gemorah. Okay, it's in the back. Yeah, that's the Gemorah. Now, there you go. Now get page Aleph there. Okay. Got it, Yanni? You got page Aleph over there. Keep turning. Page Aleph. It says Aleph up in the top left. Yeah. It says Aleph. Till you turn out. Okay. The Ran comes along and throws out a bomb kasha. Mamash a bomb kasha. And we're going to learn this Ran, not the whole thing. Don't get scared. It's a long Ran. We're only going to learn a few lines. Okay. But you'll see the learning of these few lines of the Ran will open up a major issue having to do with the mitzvah of Megillah. I mentioned at the beginning of the Shiur last week that Megillah, the Mesechta Megillah is unique. There's no Mesechta Chanukah. Yeah. What's the reason there's no Mesechta Chanukah? Huh?
Oh, because it came.
Because there's no Torah Shebiksav of Chanukah, right? We don't have a Megillas Chanukah. Right? We have a later version of what's called Megillas Chanukah, but we don't have. But that was 200 some odd years after Purim. Right. Purim was first. It's called Megillas Hantiyochos. Yeah, but it's not Chazal. Yeah. It's not a Chazal. The last and only at that time Yom Tif, the Rabbanon, is Purim. It's the first Midrabbanan Yom Tif. There's only two Midrabbanan Yom Tovim, right? That's Purim and Hanukkah. Oh. But Hanukkah has no Torah Sheval Peh. It's all in Mesechta Shabbos, right? Because there is no scripture. There's no Tanakh on Hanukkah. We have a Tanakh on Purim because Esther is part of Ksuvim, okay? Megillas Esther. So the Megillas Rus and Shiur and Eicha and Kaheles. So it's part of Tanakh. So it was the last sefer in Tanakh, right? And it was the bridge between Torah Shebiksav and Torah Sheval Peh. So it's the first Torah Sheval Peh Yom Tiv and the last Torah Shebiksav. Okay. Now we go to the Ran. Here we go. You see, go down to the Ran. You're going to go down to the middle of the wide lines. Big words, Vav Yud Shin, V'yesh. All right, you got that? V'yesh. It's a big three letters, V'yesh. In the middle of the Ran is the Perish on the bottom. Underneath, it says V'yesh.
Oh, yeah.
Look in the middle of the.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
In the middle of the page, it says V'yesh. Yes. Yeah. Now let's learn this unbelievable few lines of Ran. Okay, very easy to read and beautiful to understand. Here we go, and you're going to feel so good when we learn it because I learned a good Ran. V'yesh kan she'ela. He says it clearly. There's a big shaila here. Ma ro'u anshe knesses hagadola lachlok mitzvah zu liyomim chalukin. What was the idea behind Chazal to make a Yom Tov with different days? V'likboa yom miyuchad leprozim. There's one day for open cities, the Yom Miyuchad L'Krachim, and another day for walled cities. Why did they do that? There's no other Yom Tif that has different days. Masha ain't came b'shar mitzvahs. There's no other mitzvah. Sharei Torah Amra Torah Achasu Mishpat Echad. That's a pasuk. Torah Achasu Mishpat Echad Yeh Lachem V'Lagera Garbus Alachem. The pasuk in the Torah. You can't get away from it. It's only one Torah. How can you have one Torah for the walled cities, one Torah for the unwalled cities? How do you do that? Now, by the way, underneath this kasha, underneath this kasha is another problem of ein osin mitzvahs agudos. You're not going to make different communities when you do a mitzvah. Like for instance, I'll give you an example, okay? An example, let's say Chol HaMoed, all right? So Chol HaMoed is a question, do you put on tefillin, don't you put on tefillin, right? Okay, so Achlokas in the Gemorah, we decide that you do put on tefillin according to Tosfos, it's a mitzvah to put on tefillin. Okay, but there are some who had a minhag not to put on tefillin, right? Okay, so those who don't put on tefillin don't put on tefillin. Those who do, do. What happens in a shul? Any one shul in town. There's only one shul in town, okay? There's only one shul in town. And the majority of the people in town put on tefillin, right? Yeah. Are you allowed to daven in that shul and not put on tefillin? Absolutely not. You're not allowed. What happens if the minhag in town is not to put on tefillin? Can you daven in that shul and put on tefillin? Absolutely not. Because you're not allowed to make different communities.
People, they wait till after davening.
Oh, so I put on tefillin every day, but I daven in a shul with a minhag, not in the Young Israel. Interestingly enough, no, the Young Israel, they wore tefillin. Yeah, sure. Yeah, Beth-El didn't, and the majority of the people who came to the minyanim in the morning at the beginning were mostly.
I don't remember that in the Young Israel. If they wore tefillin on Chol Moed, I don't remember.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Were you davening there Chol Moed?
Huh?
Were you davening there Chol Moed?
Yes.
You did. You davened Chol Moed every day. Yeah, really? Okay.
It's possible that you're right.
Yeah, but they did. They wore tefillin. Okay, they wore
Right.
tefillin. They wore tefillin. Okay. When I was the associate rabbi, I didn't say a word. There were some who did wear and some who didn't wear. What? Rabbi Shiur did not wear, but some people wore. When I became the rabbi, I said, no, you can't do this. You can't do this. Those who want to wear tefillin have to daven in the next room. That's all.
Did Rav Gedalia wear?
Yes. That's the assumption. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, who can't hear me? Maya, you can't hear me?
No, Shmuel.
I can hear you.
Oh, wait a minute.
Shmuel can't.
Hold on a second. Okay. Okay. Let me see if there's something wrong here. Oh, that's the problem. Oh.
Just wants to let you.
Okay. Okay. Here we go. I didn't know they were waiting. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Now.
Okay, now I lost you.
Right, yeah, you didn't lose me.
Now I could hear you.
Yeah. Shmuel, do you hear?
Is Shmuel in?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay. No, he's not in. He's not in. I don't see him trying to get in either. Tell him to try to get in again. I'll welcome him in. Tell him to try to get in because I don't see an admit for him. Oh, here's Shmuel. Do you hear me,
Who are the
Shmuel?
Freilichs? Is that Shmuel? That's someone else?
No, it's someone else. That's Shmuel? The Freilichs is Shmuel? Oh, so Shmuel's there. He hears now, yeah?
Yeah.
Shmuel, do you hear?
He's not answering you.
Maybe he has news. No, it's possible.
What? Oh.
Okay, so Shmuel hears?
Yeah,
Maybe
Shmuel
he-
Beck is there.
Okay, Shmuel, do you hear?
Is it possible he muted himself?
Yes,
He probably
okay,
muted
all right,
himself.
okay, all right, back. So when you have some people wearing tefillin, some not, you can't do that, right? Because that's what losses go to do. So now what's behind Iran's question is the same thing. How can you have a goodness? How can you have some people doing a mitzvah on one day and some people doing a mitzvah on another day?
Second day, same thing.
No. But we're talking about it's Yontif for both. Everyone's saying the same Musaf Shmona Esrei. Everyone's saying the same Musaf Shmona Esrei. Everyone's saying the same Musaf Shmona Esrei. It's Yontif for everybody. It's just a question of whether or not you're keeping the Midrabanan laws of Yontif, but everyone is keeping that day of Yontif. There's no such thing that they're not keeping up, except at the end, at the very last day. Okay, at the very last day, or in Shavuos and so on. But that's because of the difference between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. But here, the Eretz Yisrael. I'm saying, except for this last day, except for the last day. Now, but that's because there's a difference between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. But here in Purim, even in Eretz Yisrael, there's going to be 2 different days. But it's going to be the same Eretz Yisrael, and Chutz La'aretz is going to be the same Chutz La'aretz. Let's say there's a walled city in Chutz La'aretz. They hold a different day than the town next to them that's not a walled city.
Right.
If there would be such a thing, let's say there was a walled city from the time of Yoshua ben Nun, there's a discussion about whether there was or there wasn't. Okay. But if there would be, so there would be a walled city in Chutz La'aretz that would hold the 15, and 2 miles away, there's a non-walled city that they are going to hold the 14.
Right.
Where do you find such a thing? And let's say another question. The Mishnah says that you have 11, 12, 13, which means there's a village outside the non-walled city that's 11, 12, or 13.
Right.
Where do you find such a thing? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, one Yom Tov. It doesn't exist. That's behind the Ran's kasha. You understand? Okay, back to the Ran. Okay. It says, Maro, I'm checking this Agdola, Lachlok Mitzazula, Yom Chalukim, Belikboe, Yom Yuchad Leprazim, Yom Yuchad Lekrachim. One for the open cities, one for the walled cities. Masha Ein came to Sha'ar Mitzvah, Shaharei HaTorah Amra, Torah Achaz Umishpat Echad. Yesh Lomar. Here's one answer. Okay, Yesh Lomar. Shemipnei Shahayehudim Hayosim. Because the Jews who were in the open cities, we're in the Ran on Daf Aleph. In the big Ran that starts from V'yesh, Yehudim Asher b'Shushan lo nochu me'oyeveim b'yom echad. Oh, wow! Because the war did not end for the Jews on the same day. Shaharei Yehudim haprozim nochu ba'arbasar, because the open cities Jews rested on the 14th. V'Yehudim Asher b'Shushan nochu b'chamisha asar. Oh. The asu me'aleim kol echad b'yom menucha so mishta v'simcha. And each place, wherever there was the end of the war, that's where they made the menucha and the simcha. Lefikach, therefore.
Shushan itself was not a walled city. It's only because of Eretz Yisrael.
No, Shushan was a walled city.
Oh, shit, I think it was.
It was a walled city. No, Shushan was a walled city. I think the Mordechai, what you are talking about is that Shushan was not a walled city from the Zman of Yehoshua ben Nun.
That's for sure. That's the only reason.
But Shushan was a walled city in the time of Achashverosh. Yeah, that's what the pasuk says, right? Lefikach kishekavu aleim Yom Tov ledoros, when they set up the Yom Tov for all generations, kavu alachol echad b'yom shenoch bo. They set it up on the day in which they rested. The Hishru kol hakarachim hamukavim chomer l'Shushan, and all the walled cities were equal. And if you look, excuse me, if you look on the right, you look on the right, it says Tzarech Loma Shehi. You see on the right? Yeah, that's the Greis. That's why there's a star there. It's a mistake. Yeah. Kol hakarachim hamukavim chomer l'Shushan shehi mukefes chomer mipnei sheba haya ikar hanes. Because since Shushan, which was a walled city, was the nes. When it said here she'eino mukefes chomer, what the Ran meant today, it's not a mukefes chomer. Let's go further. So now we have one question we asked, and we answered it already. What was that question? How could they break it up and make so many different days? Because it was that way when there was the established. Okay, next. Next question. We've got a few more lines. We're not going to do the whole thing. Teinach Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Dama Bigmara Dimukov and Chomim was Achashverosh Talia Milsa. According to we're going to learn next page that according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, the whole thing is dependent on whether it's a walled city from the time of Achashverosh, and Shushan was a walled city from the time of Achashverosh. But according to our Tana, the Omar, Mimos Yoshua ben Nun, our Tana in the Mishnah said walled cities in the time of Yoshua ben Nun, Holo Daniel Shushan. That's not the same as Shushan, because Shushan at the time of Yoshua ben Nun did not have a wall. So why did they set up the 15th day according to Shushan, when at the time of Yoshua ben Nun it didn't have a wall? Answer: Yesh Lomar, Hainu timer. Why? Could they lachlo kavod leEretz Yisrael? To give cover to Eretz Yisrael. Because Rashina b'Yushalmi, Rabbi Simon b'Shem, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Omar, could they lachlo kavod leEretz Yisrael? Shahayasach charva b'Osayim, because in the days of Achashverosh, the land was desolate. The Babylonians had destroyed Eretz Yisrael. The Tolu Osa b'Mos Yeshua ben Nun. Okay, now just 3 more lines. That's it. Since they had to separate between those that were walled and those that were not walled, just like Shushan is different than other cities, if we would make it Shushan from the time of Achashverosh, all of Israel would be open cities. That would be a shame for the walled cities at the time of Yoshua ben Nun, like Yericho. That they should be like walled cities, even though now they don't have a wall. But there was a wall before the end of Ran. Now, okay. So this is the beautiful, beautiful explanation of the Ran, which we just learned, and we went through asking this question. But you should know there's one more pshat I'm going to read to you. You don't have it in this Gemorah, but I found it in the big Shas Gemorah. There were 2 famous, unbelievable geniuses after the Vilna Gaon who lived in Vilna. Reb Beth-El Vilna, right? And Reb Beth-El HaKohen Vilna and Reb Shlomo HaKohen Vilna, 2 brothers, both geniuses. They knew all of Shas and Poskim by heart, backwards and forwards. They said about Reb Shlomo Vilna that he could tell you the letter that was before a pasuk. So if I asked you that, what's the last letter in Ashrei right before Pasach Yodecha? You'd have to go into and figure it out. You'd ask him what was the letter before this word? He'll tell you the letter before. Instantaneous. He knew everything. Anyway, Reb Beth-El Vilna wrote Reb Shlomo Vilna wrote a parish called the Cheshek Shlomo, which we quoted about the 5 days that he found 5 times in the Megillah. It said the word Purim. But Reb Beth-El Reb Beth-El HaKohen wrote a parish called Mare Kohen. And he quotes the Beth-El Vilna, he quotes Reb Shlomo Vilna, the Cheshek Shlomo, but it's not in the Cheshek Shlomo. I looked in the Cheshek Shlomo. I was going nuts. David called me when I was looking it up. I couldn't find that parish in the Cheshek Shlomo. It's not there. It's in the Mare Kohen, and he quotes his contemporary. Okay, here is what he says. Listen to this one. He said like this: V'yesh kan she'ela, similar to what we just. I'm going to read it quickly. It's only a few lines. V'yesh kan she'ela, ma ro'u ansek nesa gedola lachlok mitzvah zuli yom chalukim. Same question as the Ran, right? Ma she'en kein b'shar mitzvahs haTorah, right? VaTorah Amra Torah achas mishpah echad yelachem. Same question as the Ran, right? The shamati mipi Mar Ochi Agon Zal. I heard from my brother, Reb Shlomo HaKohen, who was the brother of Beth-El HaKohen, right? The Yesh Lomar, the Mishum de Be'emes Siv Ela HaMitzvahs. We're going to learn on Daf Gimel, on the bottom of Daf Beis, Amid Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. You look on Daf Beis, Amid Beis, on the bottom, there's a pasuk there, Ela HaMitzvahs, right?
2 lines from
Two lines from the bottom.
mitzvahs.
Ela HaMitzvahs. It says right there. What does the Gemara learn from that? Ela HaMitzvahs, that's a pasuk in Vayikra. She'ein novi d'shoyel echad yisrael meyata. No one's allowed to make any new laws. Right? Ela HaMitzvahs. These are the mitzvahs, but no others. Right? So he's saying, V'tashinan, Ela HaMitzvahs, she'ein novi d'shoyel echad yisrael meyata. You can't make another law. V'hilkach, ach she mikra Megillah. This is very hard to read because it's so tiny. Av shemikra Megillah matzu. Oh, av shemikra Megillah matzu Haman lahosif al divrei Torah. Right? Haman used to go around saying, "Oh, those Jews, they got so many commandments." Hashem said, "Oh, because of you, I'm going to give them another one." Right? So Haman really was causing that there be an extra, right? Okay, no, that's not the right word. I'm sorry. Wrong word. Matzu smach, they found a pasuk, a reliance, V'osav al divrei Torah, mishum the darshu kal v'chomer, ukedarminan lekamen yud dalid. Okay. Mikol makom lo ratzu lasos mitzvah zu ke'ein shel Torah. They didn't want, the Cheshek Shlomo says, and it's quoted by his brother Michael, the Chazal did not want to make this mitzvah like every other mitzvah in the Torah. Why not? Why not? Right? Sheyiyeh Torah achas. Umashma. Yeah, it should be umashma. Yeah, umashma echad l'chol Yisrael uvekivon, and therefore on purpose choku mitzvah zu lizmanim chalukim. They divided this mitzvah up differently. Laharos shehi midivreihem, to teach us that this mitzvah is the mitzvah midrabanan. Because you would think, since it's based on the pasuk, maybe it's called the oraisa. They wanted you to know that this mitzvah of Purim is derabanan. How do they let everybody know that? Different days, not like any other mitzvah in the Torah. So, in other words, there's a reason, according to Cheshek Shlomo, why it was so many days. A different answer than the Ran. A different answer than the Ran. Oh, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay. The Rabbanon, for sure.
Why should we think it's not the Rabbanon? Why should we?
Because there's psukim and we're darshaning them, and we are about to learn the Gemorah, in which we're going to darshan psukim ad infinitum. In fact, I mentioned this last week too. The psukim in the Megillah are darshaned practically every single pasuk in the Megillah is darshaned more than any other pasuk in the Torah.
Really?
More than any other place in the Torah. They darshan come out every pasuk in the Gemara.
Yeah.
There are midrashim that will darshan every pasuk in Keheles, that will darshan every pasuk in Shir Hashirim, right, or in Vayikra and Bamidbar. They'll darshan every pasuk. But in the Gemara, the only Gemara that darshans come out every single pasuk. We're going to learn. The whole first parak is darshaning psukim of YIBE Achashverosh, YIBE Achashverosh, everything from the beginning to end. They got darshan. Why? Right? Because to show this is the end of Tanakh, and since it's the end of Tanakh, you would think it's the Oraisa. Therefore, they wanted to show you it's true, it's Tanakh, but the mitzvah is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, and the way we're going to let you know that is by making it different days, not just adding on a date. Imagine we could say Sfeika Diyoma, right? You make it 2 days because it's Sfeika Diyoma. No, 5 days. We want you to know it's purely d'Rabbanan. Chanukah, you ask the same question. How come Chanukah is only 8 days? Why don't we have Sfeika Diyoma and make it 9 days because of the Sfeika Diyoma? So there are a number of different answers, okay? But one of them is it's the Rabbanon. And there, even though Kain Araisatik, and they didn't do it in this case, and there's another reason, which of course the Gemara and Be'ah discusses, and that is because it's the 25th day of the month. And once it's the 25th day of the month, the overwhelming majority of all the cities in the Gullus already knew when Rosh Chodesh was.
Same thing with Pesach.
Pesach's the 15th.
So 15 is also.
No, they didn't reach the foreign Gullus.
Oh,
No,
okay,
it was only a 15th. They didn't reach, right? They did not reach.
okay, 25th.
Only Hanukkah they were able to reach because it's 25th, but not all of them, but almost all. Okay, all right. To the Gemara. Here we go. A few more minutes. Here we go. All right, we're starting the Gemara, and now we're going to see the darshaning. Here it goes. Okay, the Gemara is really easy. The Rashis are extensive, and we're going to learn together with them because it's a nice flow. So let's take a look. The Gemara says, okay, Megillah nikres b'yud aleph. The fact that the Megillah, we're on Daf Beis Amud Aleph by the Gemara, Megillah nikres b'yud aleph. It says in the Mishnah that the Megillah is read on the 11th day of Adar, Minolon. From where do we know that? Now notice, whenever you ask Minolon, what are you asking? What are you asking? From where do we know that? What are you asking? Where's the script? What's the pasuk? Okay, Minolon. Ask the Gemara. Minolon? What are you asking us, Minolon? Like it says later on in the Mishnah, right? Chachamim hekilu al akfarim. Chachamim were lenient. Actually, it's a Gemara later on, but it's based on the Mishnah. Chachamim hekilu al akfarim liyos makdim liyom haknisa. The Chachamim were lenient on the villagers to let them read earlier on the day that they gather on Mondays and Thursdays. Kedei sheyisafku mayim umazon, so that they will be able to provide water and food la'achayim shebekrachim, to the brothers in the cities, in the big cities and walled cities. They don't. The cities don't have fields to grow produce for the field, for the city. They got to get it from outside. So these guys in the villages, the farmers and so on, they would come in on Mondays and Thursdays, sell their produce, so people would have what to eat, market days. So they're going to have to come in on Mondays, have to come in on Thursdays. They're not going to come in on Tuesday and Wednesday to hear the Megillah. So we made it easier on them. So you ask me, from where do we know? That's where we know from. The Gemara says it later on. So the Gemara answers, no. I want you to know. Anan hochika amina. The kasha, when we asked in the beginning, Minolan, was this. Mirde. Let's analyze the situation. Kulu anshe knesses hagadola takninu. All of these days were set up by the anshe knesses hagadola, right? The Isagaday, the anshe knesses hagadola. Because if you're going to tell me it's not all of them by the anshe knesses hagadola, but the anshe knesses hagadola were Yudalid v'tezvav tikun, and the anshe knesses hagadola only really established the 14th and the 15th, and the Anshe Knesses Hagadola are the rabbis of record. Then are you going to tell me, Asu Rabbanon, along came rabbis after the Anshe Knesses Hagadola, the Ikri Takanta, and uproot a decree, the Takinu Anshe Knesses Hagadola, that the Anshe Knesses Hagadola established. No, the Anshe Knesses Hagadola established that you can read it on the 14th and 15th. Because you say it's in the pasuk. Right. And then you're telling me 11, 12, 13, you know who did that? The later rabbis. Are you telling me that later rabbis came along and changed something from the Anshe Knesses Hagadola? Votnan, but we have a Mishnah in Abius, that's the source of this. Ein Bezdin, this line is like unbelievable to remember. Ein Bezdin Yochol Levatel Divrei Bezdin Chaveiro. One Bezdin cannot annul the words of another Bezdin, unless they're greater in wisdom and count. Of course, the question is what minyan means, right? Because everybody, all but they deal with the same number.
Is it possible?
They were all the same number.
Does minion mean that there were more?
23.
More what?
In the second basin, were there more people?
No, there's never more than 71. Yeah, so Mordechai has a very good shot, right? But what do you say minion means?
age.
It's experience, right? Experience. No, this Anshe Knesset Agdola, the average age was 50. We have an Anshe Knesset Agdola, we have 71 Sanhedrin, average age 70. Oh, okay. So Gedola B'minyan. Okay, good. Right. So what's the kasha? What's the kasha? How could you say 11, 12, 13 when the Anshe Knesset Agdola only said 14, 15?
Right.
And unless you're greater than them,
Yeah.
and nobody was greater b'chokhmah than the Anshe Knesset Agdola. Okay, minyan, maybe they were older, but not both chokhmah and minyan, right? So how did they change what the Anshe Knesset Agdola said? How could they change this? Nobody jumped on me when I said that. It's unbelievable. How could they change a law that the rabbis made? How could they do that?
It was made to be changed. I mean, it wasn't stone. They added.
What? Like? Yeah, we've changed things
Yeah.
that we still observe to this day.
Yeah.
What happens if Rosh Hashanah comes on Shabbos?
No shofar.
Oh,
That was the actually that's so back then. So
wait a minute. But back then in Yerushalayim, they blew shofar.
right. So who changed?
Not today.
Right.
Nobody blows today. Yeah. What about lulav?
Same thing.
Esrog.
Right.
They used to take lulav and esrog on Shabbos. We don't.
Today?
No, not today. But there's also mitzvah say no.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. It's what? Yeah, not
What's that, right?
yeah.
First they-
So even more so,
First
they should be able to change it. If when it comes to a Daraisa law, they can say you don't blow shofar, which the Torah says you have to, and here we could say you don't, right? So then when it comes to a Darabanan, certainly you could change it. I heard you. Yeah. That's the difference. Right. A sheva al tasa is different. That the Rabbanon can say shave al tasa because you're not doing anything wrong. You're just not doing.
Right.
But when it comes to adding on, the Rabbanon said 14, 15, and you're telling me 11, 12, 13? How do you do that? So it's a difference. Okay, back to the Gemara. Ella Pshita Kulu Anshe Knesset Agdola Tiknu. You got to say that all 5 of these days was set up by the Anshe Knesset Agdola because they couldn't add on. All right, we're going to stop there, but we're not finished. We're going to stop there in the Gemara, but we're going to the Rashi very quickly. Otherwise, we're not going to get any. Okay. All right. I'm making a note that we stop there in the Gemara, but we're going to the Rashi, which Mamish opens up the Gemara. Here we go, Rashi, quickly. Here we go. Says the Rashi in the Gemara on the right. And by the way, both the right and the left are Rashi because no Tosfos here.
No Tosfos Megillah?
Oh, a lot of Tosfos in Megillah, just not here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All
right. Only you guys seen it. Minolan. What do you mean Minolan? For the Be'inulim common. Here is the question that the Gemara is asking. Minolan, from where do you know the Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Chazu L'Kriya, that the 11, 12, and 13 are fit, Chazu, mean they can be seen, they are fit for the reading of the Megillah. The Yud Aleph Tezvavu, Diksiv B'Kra. Because the 14th and 15th are mentioned in the Pasuk. Which Pasuk? Where?
Oh, okay.
In the Megillah.
Yeah, Megillah.
In the Megillah.
Yeah.
Ukra Mahader Gemara, right? V'Komahader Gemara, and then the Gemara continues to ask Minolan, Bitmiya, High Love Chovahi. This law of 11, 12, 13 is not a chova, el chachamim makilu aleihem, but the chachamim were makel on the villagers, as we say later on. And what was the reason that we gave? So they should be able to supply. Sheyiyu penuyim biyom Purim. So that on the day of Purim, the villagers will be free they'll be able to go into town and sell their wares, which if they have to go to hear Megillah, they won't be able to. So they got to hear the Megillah earlier, right? Oh, no, here's what we meant to say. Here's what we meant to say. Let's analyze this. Since the Chachamim will make on the villagers, lahaktim to go earlier. Al korchacha, you must say, Ansek Nesagadola, the men of the great assembly, Shetakinu, Bimei Mordechai Esther, as Simchas HaPurim, when they made the takana of the 14th and 15th of Purim, Ukrias HaMegillah, and the reading of the Megillah, Kulu Ani Zimni Tikkun, they must have established all of these times. The Nas, the Rishus Likros, and they, the Ansek Nesagadola, were the ones who gave permission to read the Torah on those days. Why? But if of course you're going to tell me that the only days that the Chaz, that Ansek Nesagadola Masake were 14, 15, Haksum Megillah V'Sulo, that I written in the Megillah, no others. Heichi Yosef Rabbanan Basrayu, how did the Rabbanan that came after them, the Iku Takanta, and uproot their Takana of 14 and 15, the Tiva Lahaktim, and allow them to make it earlier, bit me? How could they do such a thing? They couldn't, because they're not greater than Chokhmah Minyan. El Pshita, it must be in Utikun. They themselves made it. The Kivin, the Inu Tikun, if they, the Ansek Nesagadola themselves made the law, so now we want to know what? If they made that law, it's got to be based on Psukim. Oh, Vadai Ramzinu b'Megillah Esther. The Remez must be in the Megillah of allowing them to read 11, 12, 13. That was our first question in the Gemorah. Where is it hinted to in the Megillah? And from where do we know that you can read 11, 12, and 13? And that's the kasha. We're leaving it now, and we'll pick it up from Yetz Hashem from here next week. Okay.
Next week. Then go to 8 o'clock Zoom, right?
Then it's going to be after Yontif already, I think. Like us every
8 o'clock Zoom.
Zoom will be there?
probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
When did they change that?
Bye-bye, so don't get the sign off.
What?
We don't have to
Don't
worry.
get
I'm
the
signing
sign
off.
off, so I can.
Have a great night, everybody. Have a great night.
You have a good night.
Next year, yeah.
Who's reading the book? You